It's been far too long since Sega's Shinobi graced the gaming world with its presence. While the last official game, simply titled Shinobi, was released on 3DS back in 2011, most people probably aren't familiar with that. To them, the previous game was the 2002 PS2 entry, again simply titled Shinobi. In some minds, it has been over 20 years since Sega had players on their finest ninja gear and set off on a path of vengeance. With 2025 being the unofficial year of the ninja, that wait is finally over. Not only has the rather good Ninja Gaiden Ragebound already released to whet our appetites, but Sega has resurrected its legendary action series with Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Made by Lizard Cube, one of the developers responsible for the ludicrously excellent Streets of Rage 4, this newest title features exceptional visuals, a soundtrack that reimagines classic tunes while creating new ones in an old-school style, and tons of white-knuckle action. It's like a long-lost sequel to Shinobi 3 Revenge of the Ninja Master that we never got. Suffice it to say, I really dug Art of Vengeance. While I finished its roughly 10-hour campaign, eager to play more, I did have some issues with its overall pacing and design. It's also a touch on the easy side, which seems to be a thing with a lot of retro revivals as of late. Nothing is so bad as to ruin the experience, but Shinobi Art of Vengeance maybe falls a little bit short of being a modern-day masterpiece. Shinobi Art of Vengeance is something of a soft reboot of the series. While it likely takes place years after the events of Shinobi 3 Revenge of the Ninja Master, no attempt is made to connect this latest game with previous stories. Players simply start the game at some point in the future where protagonist Joe Musashi's ninja clan, the Oboro, is under attack by a paramilitary group known as the NA Corporation. Led by the powerful Ruse, NA successfully destroys the Oboro and leaves Joe with only one path: vengeance. If there's one element here that maybe isn't quite as successful as the rest, it would have to be the story. The Shinobi games were never known for their plots, and while Art of Vengeance isn't trying to change that notion, the story presented here is a bit basic. It's actually similar to Ninja Gaiden Ragebound's attempt at a narrative, which is similarly threadbare. Both games string players along with limited cutscenes and talking character portraits to give context to the areas they explore, but not much else. In the opening segment for Art of Vengeance, the constant interruptions do break the flow a bit, but once you're past that setup phase, the pacing improves. With that out of the way, the majority of Art of Vengeance is focused on keeping players moving through rather large levels that will test not only their action prowess, but their minds. Unlike older games in the series, this latest Shinobi adventure is something of a mixture of a beat-em-up with a Metroidvania. While each level is a self-contained area and players will progress in a mostly linear fashion, you'll have to backtrack through certain segments of levels to reach the end goal. It's a bit more involved than the classic games, that's for sure, but it never devolves into monotony like retro throwback The Messenger did. The most egregious example comes towards the end, but at that point, the game almost runs out of steam a little. I'm getting ahead of myself. As you'll quickly discover during the first level, Art of Vengeance has a strong emphasis on style with its combat. Employing a system not dissimilar to modern action games, players will engage foes with both a light and heavy attack button that can be mixed and matched together for different combos. Over the course of the campaign, you'll unlock new skills that increase your capabilities, allowing you to unleash much more damage in a single combo than you could at the start. Joe Musashi's trusty kunai are also here, allowing you to deal out range damage to distant foes or even fill up their stagger bars, which when full, will allow Joe to perform a devastating Shinobi execution maneuver. The real trick with Art of Vengeance is that its combat pushes you towards weakening multiple foes so that you can execute them all at once, showering the screen not only with coins but a mess of blood. It's a thrilling gameplay loop that encourages you to prioritize specific enemies due to their stagger bars and gives you options to end rather deadly foes quickly if you're paying close attention. Supplementing that is an amulet system where players can equip both a passive and active amulet to give them different variables in battle. While I mostly stuck to amulets that upped my defense, there are options to buff your magic attacks or even increase your rage meter at the cost of health. In a lot of ways, Art of Vengeance plays like a 2D version of the 3D Ninja Gaiden games because of how many options are available to the player. As I mentioned, there are magic attacks and even a rage meter that lets you dole out even more pain on foes. Magic attacks take the form of Ninpo and can range from timing-based counterattacks to a dash attack that massively increases enemy stagger bars. Your Rage Meter, on the other hand, powers up as you take damage and can be unleashed as either a screen-clearing master attack or even one that heals you significantly. A lot of time and effort went into designing the combat loop here, and it pays off. Shinobi Art of Vengeance overcomes most of its downsides simply because its action bits are so well honed. It's a tremendous deviation from previous Shinobi games, which were more about spacing and playing at a slow pace. The reason for that change is down to Lizard Cube's desire to modernize the franchise. Sega approached the studio after the success of both Streets of Rage 4 and the earlier Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. Lizard Cube drew inspiration from the first 3 games in the Shinobi series, but introduced more in-depth combat and a combo system to bring things up to modern standards. The end result is a game that bears resemblance to the Genesis classics while still feeling like its own thing. This is the Joe Musashi of Legend rather than how he used to control, which was a little stiff and more vulnerable. Similar to this year's Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, however, I think that emphasis on modernity has sometimes resulted in a game that can feel a bit too easy. Since Joe now has a dodge roll and other pieces of equipment that can negate damage, there is rarely a sequence in Art of Vengeance that will truly test the player's skill. Boss fights can be tricky with their lack of health items, but apart from hidden platforming challenges, I was rarely dying during the course of the game. It's always fun, and the gorgeous visual design does a lot of heavy lifting, but if you're even remotely familiar with how action games play, you're likely only going to get stuck for a short bit with some boss fights. It's not impossible to die, and sloppy play will see you fall rather quickly, but Joe is such a monster here that it almost feels like a reverse horror film. You're the threat coming to wipe out everyone, and there is nothing they can do to truly stop you. It goes a little beyond combat as well. Falling down a pit won't instantly kill you, but simply set you back to the piece of ground you started on. This can sometimes create aggravating bits where you're repeating a ton of platforming, but it doesn't really affect things until the final few levels. Those areas have some truly gnarly segments that feel ripped straight out of Celeste with how they want you to slide down walls and utilize your various abilities acquired throughout the campaign, such as your grappling hook, ninja kite, and charge punch. In this respect, Art of Vengeance is way beyond what was possible in the past. Exploration isn't super key to Art of Vengeance, but you are often rewarded for traveling off the beaten path. Thankfully, if you don't care about any of that, you're never forced to find upgrades or collect hidden items. You can simply progress level to level with a convenient map screen allowing you to select specific levels in each section to semi-customize your experience. Seeking out those hidden areas, however, will see you collect more amulets and even pieces to unlock a dark katana that deals extra damage. It's really useful against the final boss, though your skills will have progressed to the point where you should be a ninja master with your abilities and able to dodge most attacks. In that sense, there are ways to make Art of Vengeance harder, but Joe Musashi is so powerful by default that raw skill will often take over. That's the biggest complaint I could come up with, apart from the aforementioned tedium in the last few levels. Lizard Cube has struck gold with Shinobi Art of Vengeance and created an engaging and well-paced action-adventure game. While it might deviate from what Shinobi used to be, it feels like a natural progression for the series. It also factors into the plot somewhat, with Joe tapping into his rage to seek vengeance. I wish that aspect was stronger, or even mimicked the classic Shinobi no Mono films, but I can't complain too much. Plot is not the reason I play video games. Overall, I had a great time with Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I hope it leads to more projects in this vein from both Sega and Lizard Cube. Right out of the gate, this game has set a high bar for what I expect from the forthcoming Golden Axe, Crazy Taxi, and Jet Set Radio revivals. I think Streets of Rage is going to have a harder time simply because 4 was so incredible. If those games can stick the landing, then old school Sega fans will have a lot to look forward to from the publisher. All that will be thanks to Joe Musashi. It's great to have him back.